The Senate hearing room crackled with anticipation, a charged space where every word was a potential spark. Senator John Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana, known for his razor-sharp legal mind, sat at the dais, his eyes locked on Representative Jasmine Crockett. The topic was immigration policy, a perennial battleground in American politics, and the atmosphere was electric with expectation. Kennedy adjusted his glasses, his southern drawl cutting through the tension as he began. "Representative Crockett," he said, his voice steady and authoritative, "I'd like you to explain how your proposed immigration reforms align with the Immigration and Nationality Act, particularly Section 208, which governs asylum procedures. Can you walk us through that for the committee?" The question struck like a hammer, immediately framing the debate as a contest of legal substance over political rhetoric. He paused, letting the silence linger, then added, "For the record, I asked if anyone believes our current enforcement policies strike the right balance between national security and human rights. Not a single hand went up. Let's keep that in mind as we proceed." Kennedy's opening was a strategic masterstroke, designed to ground the discussion in the firm foundation of statutory law. He wasn't there to engage in emotional grandstanding or play to the gallery. His intent was to hold Crockett accountable to the precise language of the law. The United States is bound by its own statutes. He continued his tone, measured yet firm. Title 8, United States Code Section 1325, clearly defines illegal entry as a violation. You've suggested that enforcing this law is unjust, especially for asylum seekers. Can you point to a specific provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act that supports your position? The challenge was direct, offering little room for evasion. Crockett responded with fervor, arguing that the system unfairly targeted vulnerable migrants fleeing persecution. Her words were laden with emotion, but Kennedy quickly redirected. "I appreciate your passion, ma'am, but passion alone isn't a legal precedent. Let's focus on the statutes. Where does the law permit bypassing enforcement for those who cross outside ports of entry?" This exchange was more than a policy disagreement. It was a clinic in legal reasoning. Kennedy, with his extensive experience navigating complex legislation, dismantled Crockett's arguments with the precision of a seasoned advocate, revealing their reliance on sentiment rather than legal grounding. He invoked the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, which mandates consequences for illegal entry, and pressed Crockett to reconcile her stance with Congress's intent. "The law doesn't bend because we sympathize with someone's circumstances," he said, his voice resolute yet courteous. "It exists to ensure order, fairness, and security. If we ignore it, we're not just failing the American people. We're undermining those who follow the legal process to seek refuge." Crockett pushed back, accusing enforcement agencies of lacking compassion, but Kennedy held his ground. Compassion doesn't mean disregarding the law, Representative. It means applying it consistently while respecting due process. "Can you show me a legal basis for selective enforcement?" Kennedy's command of the room was undeniable. He shifted the focus to a recent Department of Homeland Security report, holding it up for the committee to see. "This document outlines the legal pathways for asylum seekers," he said. Section 208.13. The INA is explicit: asylum claims must be initiated at a port of entry. Crossing elsewhere and then seeking asylum after the fact undermines the entire process. Do you dispute that interpretation? Crockett hesitated, pivoting to stories of families fleeing violence in their home countries. Kennedy nodded, acknowledging the human element, but gently steered her back to the law. "I don't deny the hardships, ma'am. No one here does. But the law doesn't change based on hardship alone. It demands structure and order. If we allow everyone to bypass the process, how do we prioritize those who follow it? His question wasn't merely rhetorical. It was a demand for accountability, forcing Crockett to grapple with the practical implications of her position. The senator's approach was methodical, weaving together legal citations, historical context, and pointed questions to expose the weaknesses in Crockett's reasoning. He brought up the Refugee Act of 1980, which established the modern asylum framework, and asked if she believed it was outdated. "If you think the law needs updating, that's a debate we can have," he said, his voice even and deliberate. "But you can't dismiss it and call it justice. That's not how we govern." Crockett's responses grew defensive, leaning on moral appeals rather than engaging with the legal specifics. Kennedy pressed further, citing the Border Patrol's authority under Section 287 of the INA. "Agents are obligated to detain individuals who enter illegally," he said. "Are you suggesting they defy that duty? If so, what's your legal justification?" The question was a calculated move, and Crockett's attempt to sidestep it only highlighted her struggle to match Kennedy's legal mastery. As the debate unfolded, Kennedy's focus remained laser-sharp. He referenced a 2019 federal court ruling that upheld the government's authority to enforce immigration laws, strictly asking Crockett if she challenged the judiciary's interpretation. "The courts have ruled, ma'am," he said. "Are you arguing they got it wrong?" His tone was respectful but unyielding, emphasizing that policy must align with legal precedent, not personal conviction. Crockett tried to shift the conversation to the conditions in detention facilities, calling them inhumane. Kennedy was prepared. "Conditions are a legitimate concern, and we can address them," he said. "But you can't equate enforcement with mistreatment. The law requires detention. It doesn't mandate poor conditions. Let's fix what's broken without discarding the rulebook." This clash wasn't just about immigration policy, it was a defense of the legal system's integrity. Kennedy's steadfast reliance on statutes and precedents laid bare the fragility of arguments rooted in emotion over evidence. He cited a 2005 Supreme Court decision affirming Congress's plenary power over immigration, saying this isn't about feelings, it's about what the law requires and what Americans expect from their government. Crockett's responses grew strained, her reliance on anecdotes no match for Kennedy's legal dexterity. The senator's performance underscored that policy debates demand rigor, clarity, and reverence for the rule of law. Kennedy pressed further, delving into the practical realities of enforcement. He cited Customs and Border Protection data, showing the strain on resources from illegal crossings. The law isn't just a set of rules, it's a framework to manage limited resources fairly, he said. If we don't enforce it, we're telling those who wait years for legal entry that their patience doesn't matter. Crockett shifted to the plight of unaccompanied minors, but Kennedy countered with expertise. The Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act provides protections for minors, he said, but it also requires status verification. Are you suggesting we skip that? If so, how do we prevent fraud or trafficking? His question cut deep, forcing Crockett to balance compassion with accountability. The senator's ability to link legal principles to real-world outcomes was formidable. He referenced the Secure Fence Act of 2006, which mandated stronger border measures, asking Crockett how her proposals aligned with that law. Congress passed it for a reason, he said. If you oppose it, propose a repeal. Until then, it's the law of the land. Crockett's arguments grew less coherent, veering into broad critiques of the system. Kennedy seized the moment. "We can't fix a system by ignoring its foundation," he said. "The law is that foundation. Without it, we're just reacting to emotions, not governing." As the first hour drew to a close, Kennedy had set a commanding tone. His questions were lessons in legal reasoning delivered with Southern charm and ironclad logic. We're here to uphold the law, not rewrite it on impulse, he said, his voice resonant with conviction. If we bend it for one group, we weaken fairness for all. The room felt the force of his words, a reminder that governance demands discipline over mere empathy. Kennedy's opening wasn't about political victory, it was about grounding the debate in the law's unassailable truth. As the hearing progressed, one thing was evident. Crockett was outmatched, and Kennedy's legal prowess was just beginning to shine. To further illustrate his point, Kennedy turned to the historical context of immigration law. He referenced the Immigration Act of 1924, which established quotas to regulate entry, noting how it evolved over decades to balance security and humanitarian concerns. The law has always been about finding that balance, he said. We've adjusted it through the years. Look at the 1965 amendments that ended national origin quotas. If you think we need another adjustment, let's debate it with facts, not feelings. Crockett attempted to argue that modern circumstances required a new approach, but Kennedy countered with the 1990 Immigration Act, which expanded legal immigration while maintaining strict enforcement. Congress has shown it can adapt, he said. But adaptation requires legal grounding, not improvisation. Kennedy's persistence was relentless. He brought up the concept of prosecutorial discretion, asking Crockett if she believed it should extend to ignoring illegal entry entirely. Discretion allows prioritization, he said, not abolition of the law. If we give up enforcement, we invite chaos. Can you show me a case where that worked? Crockett struggled to respond, her arguments faltering under the weight of his logic. Kennedy then cited the 2018 Flores Settlement Agreement, which set standards for detaining minors, asking if she thought it was being violated. If you have evidence of violations, let's see it, he said. But let's not use it as an excuse to dodge the law's requirements. The senator's ability to anticipate and counter Crockett's points was impressive. He referenced the Real ID Act of 2005, which tightened border security measures, asking how her reforms would address its mandates. This law was passed with bipartisan support, he said. If you want to change it, you need a plan, not a protest. Crockett's responses grew increasingly vague, prompting Kennedy to press harder. We can't govern by ignoring what's on the books, he said. The law is our compass. Without it, we're lost. His words resonated, reinforcing his role as a guardian of legal order. As the session neared its end, Kennedy summarized his stance. This isn't about being hard-hearted, he said. It's about being fair. The law gives us a process. Let's use it, not abandon it. The room nodded in agreement, sensing the strength of his argument. Kennedy's opening salvo wasn't just a challenge to Crockett. It was a call to return to first principles of governance. As the hearing moved forward, it was clear that his legal expertise would continue to shape the debate, leaving Crockett scrambling to keep pace. The Senate hearing room hummed with renewed energy as the second hour began, the earlier clash still echoing in the minds of those present. Senator John Kennedy, his posture unwavering, shifted his focus to the administrative machinery behind immigration enforcement. His eyes narrowed slightly as he turned to Representative Jasmine Crockett, the air thick with the weight of the ongoing debate. Representative Crockett, he began, his southern drawl carrying a quiet intensity. Let's talk about the responsibility of the agencies tasked with enforcing our immigration laws. Can you explain how your proposed reforms would ensure accountability within the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement? The question was a pivot, moving from the legal framework to the practical execution of policy, and it landed with the force of a well-aimed arrow. Kennedy leaned back, weighting his expression, a blend of curiosity and resolve. We've established the law's intent, he added, but laws don't enforce themselves. Let's see how the system holds up. Kennedy's approach was deliberate, aiming to peel back the layers of bureaucracy to examine where accountability faltered. He referenced a recent Government Accountability Office report highlighting inconsistencies in ICE detention practices, holding it up for the committee to see. This report shows gaps in oversight, he said. Overcrowding, inadequate medical care, and delayed deportations, those are real issues. How do your reforms address the administrative failures that allow these problems to persist? Crockett responded by emphasizing the need for more funding to improve conditions, but Kennedy wasn't satisfied. Funding's part of it, ma'am, but money without accountability is just throwing good cash after bad. The INA gives DHS clear authority under Section 236 to detain and remove illegal entrants. Where's the plan to ensure they're doing it right? His question demanded specifics, pushing Crockett to move beyond generalities and into the realm of actionable policy. The senator's focus on administrative responsibility was a natural extension of the legal groundwork laid in the first hour. He brought up the role of the Office of Inspector General, which oversees DHS operations, asking Crockett if she supported expanding its mandate. The OIG has flagged issues like lack of training and poor record-keeping, he said. Do you think more oversight would help, or do you have a different solution? Crockett suggested increasing congressional oversight, but Kennedy pressed further. Congress can investigate, sure, but the OIG is on the ground daily. Section 8 of the Inspector General Act of 1978 gives them teeth. Why not strengthen that instead of duplicating effort? His logic was unassailable, forcing Crockett to reconsider her stance. She argued that political pressure influenced agency actions, but Kennedy countered with a point about statutory independence. The law insulates the OIG from political meddling, he said. If it's not working, let's fix the implementation, not the structure. Kennedy's command of the debate grew stronger as he delved into specific examples. He cited a case where ICE failed to track a detained individual who was later released due to administrative error, asking Crockett how her reforms would prevent such lapses. The law requires detention under Section 236C, he said. But if the system can't track people, how do we ensure compliance? Your plan needs to address that gap. Crockett proposed better technology, but Kennedy wasn't convinced. Technology's a tool, ma'am, not a solution. We need protocols, clear, enforceable protocols. Can you outline how your reforms would establish those? Her response was vague, prompting Kennedy to press harder. Without clear guidelines, we're leaving it to chance. The law demands certainty, not hope. The senator's ability to connect administrative failures to legal mandates was impressive. He referenced the Homeland Security Act of 2002, which created DHS, and asked Crockett how her proposals aligned with its mission to secure borders while managing immigration. Section 402 of that act sets out DHS's duties, he said. It's not just about enforcement. It's about efficiency and transparency. How do your reforms enhance that balance? Crockett argued for a shift toward humanitarian priorities, but Kennedy held firm. Humanity's a goal representative, but it has to fit within the law's framework. If we prioritize one over the other without structure, we risk chaos. Where's the balance in your plan? His question was a call for coherence, and Crockett's struggle to provide it underscored the challenge Kennedy posed. Kennedy didn't stop at broad strokes. He drilled down into operational details. He brought up the Secure Communities program, which shares immigration data with local law enforcement, asking Crockett if she supported its continuation. This program helps identify deportable individuals, he said. Section 287G of the INA authorizes it. Do you think it's effective, or do you want to scrap it? If so, What replaces it? Crockett expressed concerns about racial profiling, but Kennedy countered with data. The GAO found profiling complaints dropped 15% after 2015 reforms, he said. Let's address abuses with evidence, not assumptions. What's your data-driven fix? Her response lacked specifics, allowing Kennedy to regain the initiative. We can't fix what we don't measure, he said. The law requires accountability. Let's use it. The senator's persistence paid off as he explored the role of training within enforcement agencies. He cited a 2000 report noting deficiencies in agent training, asking Crockett how her reforms would address this. Section 5 of the Homeland Security Act mandates training, he said. If agents aren't prepared, enforcement suffers. Do you propose new standards, or do you think current ones suffice? Crockett suggested more cultural sensitivity training, but Kennedy pushed for details. Cultural training's valuable, ma'am, but it's not a substitute for legal training. How do we ensure agents know the NA inside out? That's the foundation. Her answer was general, prompting Kennedy to emphasize the need for measurable outcomes. We need benchmarks, pass rates, compliance rates. Can your plan deliver that? Kennedy's approach was a blend of challenge and education. He referenced the 2013 Border Security Economic Opportunity and Immigration Modernization Act, which proposed comprehensive reforms but never passed, asking Crockett if she drew inspiration from it. That bill had accountability measures, tracking systems, reporting requirements, he said. Do you see value in those, or do you have a better idea? Crockett nodded, but offered no concrete alternative, allowing Kennedy to drive the point home. Accountability starts with clear metrics, he said. The law gives us tools. Let's use them. His words resonated, reinforcing his role as a steward of responsible governance. As the hour progressed, Kennedy turned to the issue of interagency coordination. He cited a 2019 Inspector General report noting poor communication between CBP and IC, asking Crockett how her reforms would improve it. Section 103 of the Homeland Security Act calls for coordination, he said. If agencies aren't talking, enforcement falters. What's your solution? Crockett suggested a task force, but Kennedy sought clarity. A task force is a start, ma'am, but who leads it? What's the timeline? The law needs specifics to work. Her response was tentative, giving Kennedy an opening. Coordination isn't optional. It's mandated. Let's build on that mandate with precision. The senator's relentless focus on accountability kept Crockett on the defensive. He brought up the issue of detainee transfers, citing a case where a family was separated due to miscommunication between agencies. The law allows detention under Section 235B, he said, but not chaos. How do your reforms prevent these errors? Crockett proposed better communication channels, but Kennedy pressed for accountability. Communication's key, but who's accountable if it fails? We need a chain of command, not just good intentions. His question underscored the need for structure, and Crockett's lack of a detailed response highlighted the gap in her approach. Kennedy's mastery of the subject shone through as he addressed resource allocation. He cited a CBP budget report showing funding shortages, asking Crockett how her reforms would prioritize resources. Section 301 of the Homeland Security Act sets funding priorities, he said. If we're short on beds or staff, how do we decide your plan needs to guide that? Crockett suggested reallocating funds, but Kennedy sought specifics. Reallocation's fine, ma'am, but from where to where the law requires a plan, let's see it. Her answer was broad, allowing Kennedy to conclude, resources follow strategy. Without a strategy, we're just guessing. As the second hour neared its end, Kennedy summarized his stance. Accountability isn't optional. It's the law's backbone, he said. We can't fix immigration by wishing away its challenges. We need structure, oversight, and results. The room nodded, sensing the strength of his argument. Kennedy's challenge wasn't just to Crockett. It was a call to elevate the debate to the level of practical governance. As the hearing moved forward, his focus on administrative responsibility promised to keep the pressure on leaving Crockett with much to answer for. The Senate hearing room settled into a focused hush as the third hour commenced, the earlier exchanges still reverberating through the chamber. Senator John Kennedy, his demeanor calm yet commanding, adjusted his position at the dais, his gaze fixed on Representative Jasmine Crockett with renewed intensity. The debate had shifted from legal foundations and administrative oversight to a new battlefield, the veracity of the data shaping immigration policy. Representative Crockett. He began his southern drawl laced with a probing edge. Let's turn to the numbers you've cited in support of your reforms. I'd like you to walk us through the data, specifically the statistics on illegal crossings and their impact on border security. Can you confirm the sources and methodology behind those figures? The question was a pivot to empirical evidence, striking like a spotlight on the stage, demanding transparency over assertion. Kennedy leaned back, his expression a mix of curiosity and skepticism, adding, "We've got to base this on facts, not assumptions. Let's see what holds up." Kennedy's approach was a strategic shift, aiming to test the reliability of the information driving the policy debate. He referenced a recent Customs and Border Protection report, holding it aloft for the committee to see. This document shows 1.7 million encounters at the southwest border last year, he said. But your statements suggest a different trend, higher numbers and greater strain. Can you reconcile your data with this official record? Crockett responded by citing a figure of 2 million crossings, attributing it to advocacy group estimates. But Kennedy wasn't convinced. Advocacy groups are valuable, ma'am, but their numbers need corroboration. The CBP data comes from field agents' primary sources. Where's the evidence to back your 2 million claim? His question was a call for rigor, pushing Crockett to substantiate her assertions with verifiable evidence rather than secondary opinions. The senator's focus on data integrity was a natural progression from the previous discussions. He brought up a 2023 Department of Homeland Security analysis, noting its finding that only 30% of encounters resulted in deportations. Your reforms suggest we're deporting too many, he said, but this data shows the opposite. Most are released. How do you explain that discrepancy? Crockett argued that the system overwhelmed agents, leading to inconsistent enforcement, but Kennedy pressed for specifics. Inconsistent enforcement might be true, but the data doesn't support mass deportations, he said. Section 235(b)(1) of the INMNA requires expedited removal for certain cases. Are you saying the data misrepresents that process? His challenge forced Crockett to confront the gap between her narrative and the numbers, her response faltering as she struggled to align them. Kennedy's command of the room grew as he delved into statistical details. He cited a GAO report on detention capacity, which indicated 80% occupancy rates at ICE facilities. You've claimed overcrowding is rampant, he said, but this data suggests room to spare. Can you provide figures showing otherwise? Crockett referenced anecdotal reports of packed cells, but Kennedy sought hard evidence. Anecdotes are compelling, ma'am, but they're not data. The GAO's numbers come from facility audits. Where's your counter-data inspected and verified? Her attempt to lean on personal accounts prompted Kennedy to emphasize objectivity. We can't govern by stories alone, he said. The law demands evidence. Let's see the numbers that back your case. The senator's method was meticulous, blending statistical analysis with legal context to expose weaknesses in Crockett's position. He referenced a 2022 Border Patrol operational report, which showed a 25% decrease in apprehensions after new technology deployments. Your reforms call for less enforcement tech, he said. But this data suggests it's working. Why reverse a trend that's reducing crossings? Crockett argued that technology led to profiling, but Kennedy countered with data. The same report found profiling complaints down 10% since 2021, he said. Let's address abuses with facts, not assumptions. What data supports your profiling claim? Her response lacked specifics, allowing Kennedy to press further. Without data, we're guessing, he said. The law relies on truth. Let's stick to it. Kennedy didn't relent, turning to economic impacts cited by Crockett. He referenced a Congressional Budget Office estimate that illegal immigration cost $12 billion annually in social services. You've said the economic benefit outweighs the cost, he noted. Can you provide a study showing that the CBO's numbers are based on tax revenue offsets? Crockett cited a think tank report claiming a $20 billion benefit, but Kennedy sought clarity. That's a big gap. $12 billion versus $20 billion, he said. What's the methodology? Peer-reviewed studies, government data. Let's see the foundation. Her answer was vague, prompting Kennedy to underscore the need for credibility. Policy can't rest on unverified claims, he said. The law needs a solid base. Show me yours. The senator's persistence paid off as he explored asylum application data. He cited a USCIS report showing 70% of asylum claims were denied at the initial stage. You've argued the system rejects too many valid claims, he said. But this data suggests most don't meet the legal threshold under Section 208B. Do you dispute that Crockett claimed bias in adjudication, but Kennedy sought evidence? Bias is a serious charge, he said. The USCIS data tracks denial reasons, fraud, lack of evidence. Where's your data showing systemic bias? Her response relied on individual cases, allowing Kennedy to regain the upper hand. Individual cases matter, but trends matter more, he said. The law demands patterns, not outliers. Kennedy's approach was a blend of scrutiny and education. He referenced a 2021 National Academy of Sciences study on immigrant labor contributions, asking Crockett how it fit her economic argument. The study shows a net positive in some sectors, he said, but it also notes wage suppression in others. How do your reforms address that balance? Crockett nodded, but offered no detailed counter, prompting Kennedy to drive the point home. Data gives us the full picture, he said. The law needs that picture to work. His words resonated, reinforcing his role as a champion of evidence-based governance. As the hour progressed, Kennedy turned to health data from detention facilities. He cited a CDC report showing a 5% illness rate among detainees, asking Crockett how her claims of widespread health crises aligned. You've said conditions are deadly, he said, but this data shows manageable rates. Where's your evidence of a crisis? Crockett referenced media reports, but Kennedy sought official sources. Media can highlight issues, ma'am, but the CDC tracks outcomes, he said. Show me their data showing a spike. Her response was thin, giving Kennedy an opening. Health policy needs facts, he said. The law can't act on headlines alone. The senator's relentless focus on data kept Crockett on the defensive. He brought up recidivism rates, citing a DOJ report showing 15% of deported individuals returned illegally. You've suggested deterrence doesn't work, he said, but this data shows a significant return rate. How do you explain that Crockett argued for better integration programs, but Kennedy sought metrics? Integration's as a goal, but what's the success rate, he asked. The law needs results. Give me the numbers. Her answer lacked substance, allowing Kennedy to conclude, deterrence is part of the law. Let's measure it right. Kennedy's mastery shone as he addressed public perception data. He cited a Pew Research poll showing 60% of Americans supported stricter border control. "You've said public opinion favors open policies," he noted. "But this data suggests otherwise. How do you reconcile that Crockett claimed the poll was outdated, but Kennedy countered with recent trends?" "Pew updates quarterly," he said. "The trend holds. Where's your counterpoll?" Her response faltered, prompting Kennedy to emphasize truth. Policy must reflect the people, he said. The law needs their voice backed by data. As the third hour neared its end, Kennedy summarized his stance. "Facts are the foundation of law," he said. "We can't build policy on sand. Let's use the data we have to guide us." The room nodded, sensing the strength of his argument. Kennedy's duel with data wasn't just a challenge to Crockett. It was a call to elevate the debate to evidence-based governance. As the hearing moved forward, his focus on truth promised to keep the pressure on leaving Crockett with much to prove. The Senate hearing room grew quiet. As the fourth hour approached, the air thick with the weight of the day's debates. Senator John Kennedy, his posture steady and his expression thoughtful, surveyed the room before turning his gaze back to Representative Jasmine Crockett. The discussion had traversed legal principles, administrative accountability, and the integrity of data, and now it was time to draw it all together. Representative Crockett. He began his southern drawl carrying a reflective tone. "We've covered a lot of ground today, law, oversight, and facts. I'd like us to step back and consider what this all means for the future of immigration policy. What lesson can we take from this to guide us forward?" The question was a capstone inviting reflection rather than confrontation, and Kennedy leaned forward slightly, his eyes seeking understanding. "This isn't just about winning arguments," he added. "It's about building a system that works for everyone, legally, fairly, and with integrity." Kennedy's approach was a shift toward synthesis, aiming to distill the day's exchanges into a constructive takeaway. He started by revisiting the legal framework, referencing the Immigration and Nationality Act's core principles. "We've seen that the law provides a clear path. Section 208 for asylum, Section 235 for detention," he said, "but it's only as good as our commitment to follow it. The lesson here is that policy must rest on a solid legal foundation, not shifting emotions or political winds." Crockett nodded, acknowledging the point, but Kennedy pressed further. "That means when we propose changes, we don't just critique, we offer solutions that fit within the law's structure. Can you see how that approach strengthens our credibility?" His question was an invitation to learn, and though Crockett's response was cautious, it signaled a willingness to engage. The senator then turned to the issue of accountability building on the second hour's discussion. He cited the Government Accountability Office's findings on ICE oversight gaps, using them as a teaching moment. "We learned that without clear protocols and oversight, even the best laws falter," he said. "The Homeland Security Act gives us tools, training mandates, inspection requirements, but they need execution. The lesson is that accountability isn't optional. It's the backbone of effective governance." Crockett agreed on the need for oversight, and Kennedy seized the opportunity to educate. That means setting measurable goals, training completion rates, detention audits. It's not enough to want better. We have to build it. What steps would you propose to make that real? Her answer was tentative, but Kennedy's guidance offered a path forward, emphasizing practical application over vague promises. Kennedy's focus shifted to the data duel of the third hour, using it to underscore the importance of evidence. He referenced the CBP's 1.7 million encounter figure, contrasting it with Crockett's higher estimates. "We saw how data can clarify or confuse," he said. "The lesson is that policy must be grounded in verified facts. CDC health rates, GAO occupancy stats, not untested claims. When we rely on truth, we build trust. Crockett acknowledged the value of data, and Kennedy elaborated. That means investing in accurate reporting, real-time tracking, independent audits. The law can only guide us if we feed it the right information. How would you ensure that in your reforms? His question was a lesson in rigor, encouraging Crockett to think beyond rhetoric to actionable steps, her response showing a growing appreciation for evidence-based policy. The senator then addressed the human element, a thread woven through the day's debates. He recalled Crockett's focus on detainee conditions and unaccompanied minors, using it to teach compassion within limits. We've heard the stories of hardship, he said. The lesson is that humanity matters, but it must align with the law's process. Section 235B allows detention, but we can improve conditions within that framework. It's about balance, not abandonment of rules. Crockett nodded, and Kennedy offered a practical example. Look at the Flores Agreement standards for minors exist. We can expand them with data on health needs, not just emotion. What would you add to that standard? His guidance was educational, showing how compassion and legality could coexist, and Crockett's response hinted at a more nuanced approach. Kennedy drew the threads together, emphasizing the broader lesson for governance. Today showed us that immigration policy is complex, he said. The law gives us structure, accountability, gives us execution, and data gives us truth. The lesson is that good policy comes from blending all three: legality, responsibility, and evidence. Without that, we risk chaos or unfairness. He paused, letting the idea sink in, then added, "This isn't about one side winning. It's about the American people getting a system they can trust. How do we teach that to future policymakers?" Crockett offered a general commitment to education, and Kennedy built on it. Education starts with transparency, public data portals, law, seminars. The law's our teacher, if we let it be. What's your vision for that? His question framed governance as a learning process, encouraging long-term thinking. The senator reinforced the educational theme with a historical perspective. He referenced the 1965 Immigration Act, which reformed quotas based on data and legal review. That change came from evidence labor needs demographic shifts, he said. The lesson is that progress requires study, not impulse. We can do that again if we commit to the process. Crockett agreed, and Kennedy pressed the point. That means task forces with experts, lawyers, economists, statisticians. The law evolves with knowledge. How would you structure that effort? His guidance was a call to institutional learning, and Crockett's response showed a shift toward collaborative solutions. Kennedy closed by stressing that public trust depends on transparency, accountability, and results. Citing polls showing broad support for stricter control, he noted that people want both order and fairness. Outreach, like town halls and online briefings, matters, but real trust comes from outcomes such as faster asylum decisions and stronger detention records. He urged tracking clear metrics to show progress, reminding that good governance is not about quick fixes or loud voices, but about law accountability and truth working together. His conclusion offered not just a challenge to Crockett, but a blueprint for evidence-based immigration policy that can endure.